The first time she answered for me, no one noticed. Not really, not even me. We were standing outside the bakery on a gray Tuesday morning, the kind of morning where the street looks half awake, and everyone seems to be moving only because they have to. I remember the smell of warm bread coming through the door each time someone entered, and the little bell above it ringing too brightly for such a quiet day. I had gone there for a loaf of bread and 2 pastries. Nothing important, nothing complicated. My daughter had come with me because she said she was already going in that direction. She had started saying that more often lately. I'm already nearby. I was going to stop in anyway. I might as well come with you. At first it felt kind, then normal, then expected. And when something becomes expected, you stop measuring how much space it takes. Inside the bakery, the woman behind the counter smiled at me. "The usual?" she asked. I opened my mouth to answer. But my daughter spoke first. "Yes," she said, "but just 1 pastry today, she's trying to cut down." The words were light, almost playful. The baker laughed softly. "Oh, good for you," she said. I stood there for a second with my mouth still slightly open. Not embarrassed, not angry, just interrupted. The moment passed quickly, too quickly to hold on to. My daughter smiled at me as if she had done nothing more than help. "You said yesterday you wanted to eat lighter," she said. I had said something like that. Maybe, at dinner. I had looked at the leftovers and said I shouldn't have eaten so much bread. A passing comment. A small thing, not a decision, not an instruction. But now it had become one, in front of someone else. I smiled politely. Because what else do you do? Correcting her would have made it awkward. It would have made me seem defensive over a pastry. So I said nothing. The baker wrapped 1 pastry instead of 2. I paid, we left. And on the sidewalk my daughter touched my arm gently. "That was better," she said, "better." The word stayed for a second. Then slipped away, because nothing had really happened. 1 pastry instead of 2, 1 sentence, 1 interruption. A small thing, that is how it began. The second time was at the pharmacy. A few days later, I had gone to pick up a prescription and she came along again. Same reason, already nearby, had time, wanted to help. The pharmacist asked, "Any questions about the medication?" I was about to say no, but my daughter answered first. "She forgets sometimes whether she's taken it," she said. The pharmacist looked at me, not dramatically, not with concern, just a small shift in attention. The kind people make when a new piece of information changes how they see the person in front of them. I felt it immediately. "I don't forget," I said. My voice came out calm, maybe a little too calm. My daughter smiled. "She means not often," she said quickly. "Just once or twice." "We're keeping track." That word entered the space before I could stop it. The pharmacist nodded. "I can print a medication schedule if that helps." "No, thank you," I said. At the same time, my daughter said, "That would be great." We spoke over each other, only slightly, but enough. The pharmacist paused, looked between us, then looked at my daughter. "Sure," he said. And he printed it. I stood there while the paper came out of the machine, listening to the little mechanical sound, feeling something quiet tighten in my chest. Not because of the schedule. Because of where his eyes had gone. Not to me, to her. When we stepped outside, I held the paper in my hand, folded once, unasked for, unneeded. "You didn't have to say that," I said. She looked genuinely surprised. "Say what?" "That I forget." She sighed softly, not annoyed, more like disappointed that I had misunderstood something. "I didn't say it like that." "You did." "I said sometimes." "That's still saying it." She stopped walking for a second, turned toward me. "Mom, I'm not trying to embarrass you." I know, and I did know, that was the difficult part. She wasn't trying to embarrass me. She wasn't cruel. She wasn't loud. She was calm, careful, concerned. And somehow that made it harder to challenge, because cruelty is easy to recognize. Concern wears a softer face. She touched my arm again. "I'm just trying to make sure people understand." I looked at her. "Understand what?" She hesitated, only for a moment. "That you might need a little support." There it was, not help, support. A word with clean edges. A word that sounds kind. A word that can fit into almost any room without making noise. I didn't answer. Because I knew that if I did, it would become another small conversation where she softened everything until the original sentence disappeared. So I walked, and she walked beside me. A few steps later, she said, "You know I'm on your side." I looked ahead, at the wet pavement, at the people passing, at the pharmacy bag in my hand. "I know," I said. But for the first time, the words didn't feel complete. The third time happened during a phone call. That one stayed with me, because it happened in my own home, at my own kitchen table. With my own phone in front of me, the insurance office called about a form I had submitted the week before. I had filled it out myself. I remembered exactly where I had placed it, how long it had taken, which part had annoyed me because the box was too small for the answer. My daughter was there when the call came. Sitting across from me, drinking tea, I answered on speaker because I had flour on my hands from making dough. "Hello. Good afternoon," the woman said. "Is this Mrs. Whitman?" "Yes, speaking." Before the woman could continue, my daughter leaned forward and said, "I'm here too, I'm her daughter." The woman paused. "Oh, all right." I looked at my daughter. She smiled faintly, just helping. That was what the smile said, just making it easier. The woman began explaining that one section of the form needed clarification. I listened. I understood. I was about to answer, but my daughter spoke first. "She meant to mark option B," she said. I turned toward her. "No," I said. The woman on the phone went quiet. My daughter looked at me. "Mom, we talked about this." "We didn't." "Yes, we did. You said option B made more sense." I said I needed to check. She inhaled softly, not angry, patient. The kind of patience that makes the other person look unreasonable. "Okay," she said gently. "Then maybe you don't remember." The words landed in the middle of the kitchen. Clear, soft, devastating. Not because she shouted. Because she didn't. Because the woman on the phone heard it. Because now, suddenly, the conversation wasn't about a form. It was about whether I could be trusted to answer it. I wiped my hands on a towel, picked up the phone, turned speaker off, held it to my ear. "I'll call you back," I said. The woman hesitated. "Of course." I ended the call. The room was silent. My daughter looked at me, not guilty, concerned. That was worse. "You can't say things like that while I'm on the phone," I said. I was trying to prevent confusion. There was no confusion. There was about to be. I stared at her, because now something had shifted, not just that she answered for me. That she believed she should. She believed she could see confusion before I could. She believed she could step in before I made a mistake. And if she believed that, then every conversation would have a new shape. One where I spoke and she corrected. One where I answered and she clarified. One where I existed but she translated. I stood up from the table, not quickly, not dramatically, just enough to end the moment. "I'll handle my own calls," I said. She nodded immediately. "Of course." The same way she always did. Agreeing without moving. Accepting without changing. I walked to the sink and washed my hands slowly. The water was warm. The flour came off in pale streaks. Behind me, she said, "I just don't want people to misunderstand you." I kept my hands under the water, watching it run, and I realized something then. She had started speaking on my behalf. But she wasn't just answering questions. She was changing the meaning of my answers. And the more she did it, the less people waited to hear mine. The next time, I tried to be faster. That was the only strategy I had at that point. Not to stop her, not to confront her, just to get there first. We were at the cafe 2 streets away from the apartment, the one with the narrow tables and the chalkboard menu that never quite matched what they actually served. It was late afternoon, not busy, just a few people scattered across the room, each one wrapped in their own quiet routine. We had sat near the window. She chose the seat facing the room. I took the one facing the street. I noticed that, not at the time, later, the waiter came over. "Can I get you something to drink?" I didn't hesitate. "Just a coffee," I said, quick, clear. Before she could say anything, he nodded. "And for you?" he asked her. "Tea," she said, simple, nothing unusual. He turned back to me. "And food?" "I'll just take a sandwich," I said, again quick. Controlled, I could feel it, that small effort, staying ahead of something that hadn't happened yet. He wrote it down, looked at her. She smiled. She'll have the chicken one, she said. I froze. Not physically, internally, because I hadn't said which one. I was going to choose, I said. The words came out quieter than I intended. She turned toward me. You always take the chicken, she said. The certainty in her voice was soft, not aggressive, but complete, like the decision had already been made. I looked at the waiter. He hesitated, pen still touching the paper. Caught between two versions. She'll have the chicken, my daughter repeated gently. The waiter nodded. Of course. And just like that, it was decided. Again, the moment moved forward. The order was placed, the interaction closed, and I sat there feeling something settle in my chest. Not anger, not embarrassment, something slower, something that spread quietly. I waited until the waiter left, then I looked at her. I didn't say that, I said. She tilted her head slightly. You always do. That doesn't mean I would today, she smiled. You were going to. The sentence landed in that same space. Not provable, not disprovable, just plausible. I leaned back in my chair, because now arguing felt pointless. Every answer she gave lived in that space. That in-between, where nothing is clearly wrong, but nothing is fully yours. When the food arrived, it was the chicken sandwich. I ate it. Of course I did. What else was I going to do? Send it back, explain that I hadn't chosen it, turn it into something bigger than it was. No, I ate it. And as I did, I kept thinking the same thing. Not about the sandwich, about the moment before, the one where I had spoken, and she had followed, adjusted, replaced. Later that evening, something else happened. Smaller, quieter. But more revealing. We were in the living room. The television was on, but neither of us was really watching it. A commercial ended. A show started. And I said something, just a comment. This looks familiar, I said. She didn't look at the screen. You've already seen it, she said. I turned toward her. I don't think so, she nodded. You watched it last week. I searched my memory, not deeply, just enough to check. Nothing came. I don't remember that, I said. She shrugged slightly. You didn't like it. The detail made it stronger, more believable, because it wasn't just you saw it. It was you saw it and had an opinion. I looked back at the screen, at the actors. At the scene, trying to find something, anything that felt familiar. But there was nothing, just the same sense I had felt before, that space between certainty and doubt. I think I would remember, I said. She didn't respond right away. Then she said, you don't always. The words were soft, but they didn't feel soft. They felt placed, carefully. Like something that had been used before, and would be used again. I didn't answer. Because now the pattern was clearer, not just speaking for me, not just deciding small things. She was building something, slowly, moment by moment, a version of me that needed correction, that needed clarification, that needed someone to step in. And the more that version appeared, the more people accepted it, because it wasn't dramatic, it wasn't loud, it didn't demand attention, it just existed. And once it exists, it becomes easier to follow. The next morning, I made a decision, not a big one, not something I announced, just something I held onto. I would not let her answer for me. Not once, no matter how small, no matter how easy it would be to let it pass, because that was how it worked. It passed, until it didn't. We went to the post office around noon, a short line. A quiet room, the kind of place where conversations are brief and efficient. When it was my turn, the clerk looked at me. How can I help you? I spoke immediately. I need to send this package. My voice was steady, clear. Mine, he nodded. Standard or express? Standard, I said, no hesitation, no space. He started typing. And do you need tracking? Yes, I said, again quick, before anything else could enter the space. The clerk printed the label, handed it to me. Please confirm the address. I looked at it. Read it, and before I could say anything, she leaned in slightly. It's correct, she said. The words came softly, almost as if she were helping me, almost as if she were saving me a step. The clerk looked at her, then at me, and I felt it again, that shift, that movement, that small redirection of attention. I'll confirm it, I said, and this time I didn't let it pass. I took the label, looked at it again, slower, deliberate. Yes, I said, it's correct. The clerk nodded, finished the transaction, and handed me the receipt. We stepped aside, and I felt it. Not relief, not exactly. Something closer to control. Small, fragile, but real. I had answered. I had stayed in the moment, and for once it hadn't been replaced. But when we stepped outside, she looked at me and said, "You don't have to rush." The sentence was soft, concerned, almost gentle. I looked at her. "I'm not rushing." She smiled slightly. "You are a little." There it was again, that same space, that same quiet adjustment, not denying what I did, reframing it, and I realized something then. It didn't matter how fast I spoke, or how clearly, or how directly, she would always follow, not to interrupt, to redefine. And if that continued, it wouldn't matter what I said, because someone else would always explain what I meant. I didn't try to be faster the next time, because I understood something after the post office. Speed didn't solve it. Clarity didn't solve it. Even speaking first didn't solve it. She didn't replace what I said. She followed it, adjusted it, reframed it. And once that happened, it didn't matter who spoke first. The meaning shifted anyway. So the next time I tried something else. I tried to stay, not ahead, not behind, inside the moment. Fully, we were at the grocery store, early evening, not crowded but not empty either. Carts moving slowly down the aisles, people pausing in front of shelves, comparing things that all looked the same. We walked side by side, not talking much, which had become normal. Not uncomfortable, just quieter than before. We stopped near the produce section. I picked up a bag of apples, turned it slightly in my hand, checking them the way I always did. Looking for soft spots, bruises, anything that didn't feel right. "They're fine," she said. I didn't look at her. "I'm checking," I said. She nodded. "I know, then you don't need to overthink it." The word landed. Overthink, not rush, not forget. Now it was something else. I placed the apples in the cart, not because I had finished checking. Because the moment had changed. Because now it wasn't just an action. It had been labeled, measured, placed somewhere. We moved to the next aisle, bread. I reached for a loaf. Looked at the expiration date. A habit, simple, unconscious. "That one's fresh," she said. I turned it slightly anyway. Checked the date, because now that mattered more than before. "Yes," I said. She smiled. "I told you, not you were right. Not it is. I told you," a small shift, but clear. I placed it in the cart, and we kept walking. At the checkout, the cashier looked at me. "Did you find everything you needed?" "Yes," I said, simple, automatic. And for a second, nothing happened. No follow-up, no adjustment, just the answer. "Then she forgets things sometimes," my daughter added lightly. The sentence came like it belonged there, like it completed something. The cashier nodded politely. "Oh, I do too," she said. Friendly, neutral, no judgment, but the shift had already happened, not in her, in the space, in the way the answer had been expanded, redefined. I turned toward my daughter. Because this time I didn't want it to pass. "I didn't forget anything," I said. She looked at me, calm. "I know. Then I just meant in general." In general, another one of those phrases. Broad enough to avoid conflict. Specific enough to stay. I paid, took the receipt, and we left. Outside, the air felt cooler, sharper, like something had changed, not in the temperature. In how I felt inside it. "You didn't have to say that," I said. She sighed softly. "I wasn't saying you forgot today. You said it." I clarified, that was new, a new word. A new way to frame it, not speaking for me, clarifying me. "I answered the question," I said. "And I added context," she replied. Context, another layer. Another way to extend something that had already been complete. I stopped walking, just for a second, because now I needed to see it clearly. "You're changing what I say," I said. She shook her head. "No, then I'm helping people understand." The same sentence, again, but now it didn't feel the same, because I had seen enough moments, enough shifts. Enough small adjustments to recognize the pattern. This wasn't about helping people understand me. It was about defining me, in small ways, in harmless ways. In ways that didn't seem worth correcting, until they became consistent, until they became expected, until people stopped asking and started assuming. We walked home in silence, not heavy, not tense. just quiet, but the silence wasn't empty anymore. It was filled with something else, awareness. When we got back, I placed the groceries on the counter, took out the apples, set them down. And for a moment, I just looked at them. Because now even that felt different. Not the apples, the act, everything felt like it had a second version, a version that could be explained, adjusted, reframed, and I realized something. It wasn't just that she spoke for me, it was that every time she did it stayed. Not just in the moment, in how people saw me, in how they listened, in what they expected next time. And if that continued, eventually, they wouldn't wait for me at all. They would just look at her. That evening, I decided to do something I hadn't done since this started. I called someone alone, not on speaker, not with her in the room. Not with the possibility of her leaning in and adjusting something halfway through. Alone, it shouldn't have felt like a decision, but it did. I took my phone into the bedroom, closed the door, sat on the edge of the bed, and for a moment I just held it in my hand, because now even this felt different. Not the call, the context, the awareness that something might change if she were there. I dialed my sister, the line rang twice, then she picked up. "Hey," she said. "Hey," I replied, and immediately something felt clear, not easier, just uninterrupted. We talked about small things at first. The weather, something she had watched, something I had made for dinner the night before, nothing important, nothing that needed explanation. Nothing that needed clarification, and that's when I noticed it. She wasn't waiting. She wasn't pausing. She wasn't leaving space for someone else to confirm what I meant. She was just talking to me. Directly, the way it had always been. "How's everything over there?" she asked. "Fine," I said, a pause. "Quiet," she laughed softly. "You like quiet." "I do," and the sentence stayed. Not because it was important, because it was accepted. No one added to it. No one reframed it. No one said, "Well, actually," we talked for a few more minutes. Nothing changed, nothing shifted. And when we hung up, I stayed there, phone still in my hand, because something had become clear. Not dramatically, not suddenly, just quietly. When she wasn't there, I existed without adjustment. I walked back into the living room. She was sitting on the couch, same place, same posture, looking at her phone. "Who were you talking to?" she asked. "My sister," I said. She nodded. What did she say? The question was simple, normal, but now it felt different because now I was aware of it. "She's doing fine," I said, a pause. "Then she mentioned you seemed a little stressed last time you spoke." I looked at her, because now that wasn't something I had said. "I didn't say that," I said. She looked at me, calm. "You implied it." There it was, another shift, not what I said, what I implied, something that didn't need to be spoken to be redefined. "I didn't imply anything," I said. She shrugged slightly. "You sounded tired," sounded. Another layer, not content, tone, interpretation, something that could always be adjusted, always be expanded. "I'm not tired," I said. She nodded. "I know, then, but you've seemed off lately." Off, the word landed, because now it wasn't about the call, it was about me, again, placed into something, defined, reframed. I sat down across from her, because now I needed to stay in it, not avoid it. "What did you tell her?" I asked. She didn't answer immediately, because now that question mattered. "I just said you've had a lot on your mind," she said. I stared at her, because now that wasn't what had happened. "She didn't ask that," I said. She nodded. "I know, then I just wanted to give her context." Context, again, always context, always something added, something that reshaped what had already been said. "You're talking for me," I said. The sentence came out clear, not emotional, not raised, just exact. She shook her head. "No, then I'm explaining." Explaining, another word, another way to position it, not replacing. Not controlling, just helping. "I didn't ask you to explain anything," I said. She looked at me, and for the first time there was a small pause, not long, but noticeable. "I didn't think you needed to ask," she said. The words stayed. Because now that was the structure. She didn't need permission. She didn't need confirmation. She saw something, interpreted it, and shared it as if it were already agreed, as if it were already mine. I leaned back slightly, because now I could see it fully, not just in conversations with strangers. Not just in small interactions, everywhere. Phone calls, orders, simple answers. Everything I said had a second version, and the more that version appeared, the more it replaced mine, not by force. By repetition, by presence, by quiet consistency. And I realized something then. It wasn't just that she was speaking for me, it was that people were starting to listen to her instead. The next morning, I didn't wait for it to happen. That was new. Before, it always caught me in the moment. A sentence, a correction, something small that slipped in before I could stop it. But now I was expecting it, and that changed the way I moved through everything. We went to the bank just before noon, a short visit, just to ask about something simple. A fee on my account that didn't make sense. Nothing complicated, nothing that needed explanation. At least, that's what I thought. We stood in line for a few minutes. People ahead of us speaking quietly, the low hum of conversations blending into one another. I could feel her next to me, not close enough to touch, just present, and I realized something. I wasn't focused on the question I was going to ask. I was focused on when she would speak. That was the shift, not the situation, where my attention was. When it was my turn, the advisor looked at me. "How can I help you?" I answered immediately. "I have a charge on my account I don't recognize." Clear, direct, complete, he nodded. "Do you have your statement?" "Yes," I said, already taking it out. I placed it on the desk, pointed to the line. "This one." He leaned forward, looked at it, started reading. And for a moment, nothing happened. No interruption, no correction, no second version, just the interaction. I stayed there, focused, because now this mattered, not the charge, the space. The ability to speak without being followed. The advisor nodded. "I see it," he said. "It looks like a service fee." "I didn't sign up for anything," I said. He nodded again. "We can check that." He started typing. And then, "She sometimes misses the small details," my daughter said. The sentence came softly, carefully placed, almost like an afterthought, but it was. I felt it immediately, that shift, that redirection. The advisor looked at her, then back at me, and something changed, not visibly, but I felt it, in the way his attention moved. In the way the interaction adjusted. "I'm sure we'll figure it out," he said. His tone was slightly different now. Softer, more accommodating. I looked at my daughter. Because this time I didn't want it to pass. "I didn't miss anything," I said. The words came out firm, not loud, but anchored. She nodded. "I know, then I just meant it could have been easy to overlook." Always the same pattern. A statement, then a soft correction, then a reframing, something that kept both versions alive. But placed hers just slightly above mine. "I checked it," I said. She smiled. "I know you did. Then, and it's good that we're double-checking." We, again, always we. Even when it was something I had done alone, even when it was something I had already checked. The advisor cleared his throat slightly. "I'll just verify a few things," he said. And now the interaction had changed. Not because of what I said, because of what she added. He asked a few more questions, I answered them. But each answer felt less central, less final. Like it could be expanded at any moment, like it wasn't complete until it passed through her. When we finished, he printed something, handed it to me. "We'll remove the charge," he said. "Thank you," I replied. We stood up, stepped away, and I felt it. That same quiet shift, not in the outcome, in the process. I had spoken, I had explained, but something had still been placed over it. A layer, a filter, a version that adjusted how it was received. Outside, I stopped walking, not for long, just enough, because now I needed to say it, not later, not after thinking. Now. "You can't keep doing that," I said. She looked at me, not surprised, not defensive, just calm. "Doing what?" "You add things," I said. "Every time I speak." She sighed softly. "I'm helping clarify." Clarify, always clarify, never replace, never control, just clarify. "I don't need clarification," I said. She nodded. "I know, then, but other people might." That was the shift, not about me, about them, about how I was perceived, about how I might be misunderstood, and she was stepping in to prevent that. "I'm not being misunderstood," I said. She tilted her head slightly. You don't always notice. There it was again, that same space, that same quiet doubt, placed exactly where it needed to be. Not strong enough to argue, just enough to stay, I looked at her, because now it was clear, not just what she was doing, why it worked. It wasn't loud, it wasn't obvious. It didn't contradict me directly. It sat next to what I said, adjusted it, expanded it. And over time, that version became the one people trusted more, not because it was correct. Because it was consistent, and consistency is what people follow, even when it isn't yours. I stopped going out with her for a few days after that, not because I said I would. Because it felt necessary, like I needed space where nothing could be adjusted in real time, where my words could exist on their own. At first, it felt simple. Quiet mornings, running errands alone. Short conversations with people who didn't know anything about me beyond what I said in that moment. And I noticed it immediately. Not the absence of her, the absence of that second version. I went back to the bakery, same place, same bell above the door, same smell of bread. The woman behind the counter looked at me. "The usual?" she asked. "Yes," I said, "2 pastries, no pause." No correction, she smiled, wrapped them, handed them to me, and that was it. No one added anything, no one explained, no one reframed it. I paid, walked out. And stood on the sidewalk for a moment longer than I needed to, because something felt restored. Not changed, returned. Later that afternoon, I called the insurance office again. This time I stayed in the living room, door open, phone to my ear, no speaker, no second voice. The woman on the line asked a few questions, I answered them. Clearly, directly, she didn't pause. Didn't hesitate, didn't ask for clarification beyond what I said. And when the call ended, everything had been resolved. No adjustments, no reinterpretations, no added context, just the conversation. That should have been enough, but it was, because when my daughter came home that evening, the first thing she asked was, "Did you call them?" I nodded. "Yes." She set her bag down. "What did they say?" I explained it, briefly, just the outcome. "They fixed it." She listened, nodded, and then, "You probably didn't explain it very clearly the first time," she said. The sentence came easily, without hesitation, like it filled a gap that didn't exist. I looked at her, because now that was the part that stayed, not what I said, what she added. "I explained it fine," I said. She smiled slightly. "I'm sure you did. Then, but sometimes it helps to be more specific." More specific. Another layer, another adjustment. Even when she wasn't there, she was still shaping it. After the fact, reframing what had already happened, I leaned against the counter, because now distance didn't stop it. It just changed when it happened, not during the moment, after it, rewritten once it was done. "I handled it," I said. She nodded. "I know, then I just want to make sure it doesn't happen again." Always the same ending, always framed as prevention, as care, as something for me, but now I could see it. Not just the pattern, the reach. It didn't need her to be present. It just needed the space after. The moment where something could be explained differently. And once it was explained, it stayed. That night, I thought about something I hadn't considered before. Not what she was saying, where it was going. Because if she continued, if every conversation had a second version, if every answer was followed by a clarification, then eventually, the first version wouldn't matter. People wouldn't wait for it, they would expect the second one. The real one, the one that made more sense. And if that happened, then I wouldn't be the one being asked anymore. They would look at her, first, and that realization didn't come with fear, it came with something else. A quiet certainty, that if I didn't stop it now, there wouldn't be anything left to stop. The next time I saw it happen, I didn't let it pass. Not even for a second. We were at a small gathering at my sister's house. Nothing formal. Just a few people, food on the table, quiet conversations that moved from one subject to another without anyone noticing when they changed. I had hesitated before going. Not because I didn't want to see them, because I knew she would be there. And more importantly, I knew how it would happen. Not loudly, not in a way anyone would question, just small adjustments. Placed inside normal conversations, we arrived a little after everyone else. People greeted us, Smiles, hugs, the usual. For a while, everything stayed normal. I spoke. People listened. There were no interruptions, no corrections, and I almost believed it wouldn't happen. Then someone asked me a simple question. "So how have you been lately?" I answered. "Good," I said. Just keeping things simple. It was a small answer, but it was mine, clear, complete. And then, "She's been a little overwhelmed," my daughter added. The sentence slid into the conversation like it belonged there. No pause, no hesitation, just placed. I turned toward her immediately, because this time I was ready. "I didn't say that," I said. The room shifted slightly, not dramatically, but enough. My daughter smiled, soft, calm. "I know," she said. "Then I just meant you've had a lot going on." The same structure, the same pattern. And I could see it happening, not just in her, in the room, people nodding, accepting it, letting both versions exist, but holding on to hers, because it added something. Because it explained something, because it sounded complete. I looked at the person who had asked the question. "I'm fine," I said, this time slower, deliberate, not to correct her. To replace the version she had just created. He nodded. "Of course." But the moment had already changed. I could feel it. In the way the conversation moved. In the way the next question was asked. Not to me, to both of us. "How are you managing everything?" Everything. A word that hadn't existed before. A word that came from her version. Not mine, I answered again. "There isn't anything to manage," she smiled. Then, "She's being modest." That was the moment. The one where it became impossible to ignore, not just because she spoke, because she overrode. Directly, cleanly, in front of everyone, I felt it, that shift. That quiet movement where my words lost weight. Not erased, just lighter. I looked at her. And this time, I didn't let it move forward. "You need to stop doing that," I said. The room went still, not silent, just aware. She blinked, once, not surprised, just adjusting. "Doing what?" she asked, the same question, the same calm tone, but now it didn't land the same way. "Answering for me," I said. "I answered," she replied. "And then you changed it." She shook her head slightly. "I clarified, always the same word." I looked around the room, at the people watching, listening, waiting. Because now this wasn't just between us, this was visible. "This is what happens," I said. "You say something after me and suddenly that's what people hear." No one spoke, but I could see it. The recognition, the understanding, small, quiet, but there. My daughter exhaled softly. "I'm just trying to help people understand you better." The same sentence, again, but now it didn't hold. Not in the same way, because now it was out loud. Now it was visible. Now it could be questioned. "I don't need help being understood," I said. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was correcting her. I felt like I was reclaiming something. Not control. Presence. The ability to exist in a conversation without being followed. Without being adjusted. Without being translated. She didn't respond immediately. And that pause, that small hesitation, was the first break in the pattern. Because for once, she didn't have a second version ready. And that changed everything. No one spoke for a moment after that, not because they didn't know what to say, because they were waiting. Waiting to see what would happen next, not between us, around us, because now it wasn't just something that happened quietly in small moments. It was visible, clear. Placed in the middle of the room where it couldn't be softened or adjusted. My daughter looked at me, not defensive, not upset, just still, and that stillness was new. Because before there was always movement, a response, a clarification, something that filled the space. Now there was nothing. I didn't say anything else. I didn't need to. Because the sentence had already done what it needed to do. It had stopped the pattern, at least for that moment. Someone cleared their throat softly. Another person shifted in their seat. And then the conversation moved again. Slowly, carefully, but it moved, not through her, through me. "So," my sister said gently, looking directly at me, "what have you been doing lately?" She didn't glance at my daughter. She didn't wait. She asked me. And she stayed there, waiting. That was the difference, not the question, where it was directed. "I've been keeping things simple," I said, the same sentence as before, but this time it stayed. No addition, no correction. No second version, just mine, she nodded. That sounds good. And that was it. The conversation continued. People asked me things, I answered. And for the first time in a long time, the answers remained, not expanded, not adjusted, not reframed, just accepted. My daughter didn't interrupt, didn't add anything, didn't step in. She sat there, listening, and I realized something. Not that she had stopped, that the space had changed. Because once people saw it, once they noticed the pattern, it became harder to continue it. Not impossible, just visible, and visibility changes things. Later, when we left, we walked in silence for a while, not uncomfortable, not tense, just quiet. The streetlights reflected on the pavement, creating long, soft lines that moved with us. After a few minutes, she said, I didn't realize it came across like that. The sentence was quiet. Different from before, not placed, not structured, just said, I looked ahead because now I needed to be clear. It doesn't just come across that way, I said. That's what it is. She didn't respond immediately, and that pause felt real, not calculated, not controlled. I thought I was helping, she said, the same sentence. But this time, it didn't sound certain. It sounded reconsidered. I know, I said, and I did. That had always been true, but it didn't change anything. Because help doesn't replace someone's voice, it doesn't follow it, it doesn't reshape it. It stands beside it, or it steps back. We kept walking, a few more steps. Then she said, I'll stop. The words were simple, no explanation, no condition, just a decision. I nodded, not because I needed reassurance, because I understood something. Stopping wasn't just about not speaking. It was about not adding, not reframing, not creating a second version. And that would take more than silence, it would take awareness. The kind she hadn't had before. When we reached the apartment, I unlocked the door, stepped inside. The space felt the same, but also not, quieter, clearer. Like something that had been layered over everything was gone. I set my keys on the table, took a breath, and for a moment, I just stood there. Because now, there was nothing waiting to follow. Nothing waiting to adjust, nothing waiting to explain, just the next thing I would say, and the certainty that it would be enough.